Welcome. In this episode, we will dive into the Resource Lifecycle Management in Azure Cloud Infrastructure or ecosystem, covering the entire journey from provisioning and configuring resources to monitoring and scaling. And we will also go to finally decommissioning them. We'll also highlight the best practices for updating and deleting resources, and how you can leverage Azure automation and logic apps to automate resource cleanup. So let's get started. The first point is managing the full lifecycle of resources in Azure. Well, managing the full lifecycle of resources is key to ensuring your environment is efficient, secure, and cost-effective. Here's how each stage of the lifecycle is handled in Azure. The first stage is, of course, creating something, provisioning. The lifecycle starts with this creation or provisioning stage. Here, you can create resources such as VMs or virtual machines, storage accounts, and network implementation using various tools like Azure Portal, which provide you a graphical interface. But you can also use CLI interface if you want, or even ARM templates for automation and reliability. ARM stands for Azure Resource Manager. So you can use the ARM templates for automatically creating or provisioning resources. Now, after provisioning, resources need to be configured for higher security and functionality. This includes setting up your RBAC rules for access management and applying Azure policies to ensure governance and compliance over that resource ecosystem. Once you have done that, then you have to move to monitoring. So it's important to track their performance. There means the resource performance. With Azure Monitor, you can monitor matrices or the information like CPU usage, memory, and response time of an application or a service. And on top of it, you can also set up alerts to notify you or other admins when the resource requires attention. Or you can also optimize scaling further. We already discussed what scaling is in the previous episode. So over here, we can also use scaling to handle fluctuations in demand or spikes in demand. You can enable auto-scaling as well. Scaling can be done manually, or you can opt for auto-scaling. This allows Azure to automatically scale your resources like virtual machines, containers, database, app service, and more, ensuring that resources will grow or shrink based on the demand. So once that is done, we can focus on decommissioning. So that is the whole life cycle. Decommissioning means removing the resource or removing it with a proper sequence. So when resources are no longer required or when services are no longer required, it's essential to decommission them in a proper sequence. You cannot just go ahead and delete everything, right? Here you can delete or decommission resources safely using resource locks to ensure they are not accidentally removed. So you have to remove the locks one by one. You have to follow a proper procedure and more. You can also apply policies to enforce cleanup standards. It simply means that, yes, the end result is to delete or to remove resources, but anyone who wants to decommission the environment, they have to follow a proper sequence. Now, we can move to discuss the best practices for updating and deleting resources. Well, updating and deleting resources must be handled with care to avoid service disruption and a potential data loss. So let's break down some of the best practices. The first one we already discussed, that is resource lock. Now, resource locks, although a very simple option to actually apply, but resource locks are very vital for protecting your critical resources. By applying read-only or cannot delete locks, you can prevent accidental deletions or modifications of important resources or services like a production web server or a database. Next is update carefully. When updating resources, especially the resources which are live or in production, you always test the changes in a staging environment first. Staging environment means a sandbox where if something goes wrong, at least your business will not suffer that much. This further reduces the risk of disruption in live production environment where your company is actually running the live environment to make money. So that should not be interrupted. Or in simple words, your business continuity will not be disrupted. The next is track changes. Well, Azure activity logs will provide a history of resource updates and deletion, offering an audit trail which can be followed for forensics. This allows for rollback or tracing of changes in case of any big error. The next point is the best practice, decommission gradually, step by step, following the sequence. Remember, rather than deleting everything at once, remove resources step by step, starting with less critical ones first. This approach will minimize the risk to active workloads and systems, ensuring that dependencies are managed properly. In simple words, don't just go ahead and delete the whole resource group. Because in that resource group, you may be running some critical services. You don't want your critical services to be deleted by mistake. So before deleting resources, you verify that no other resources are dependent on the ones which is being removed. This ensures that you don't accidentally or unintentionally break the workflow or services relying on those resources. So this is how you manage dependencies. Now, automating resource cleanup with Azure automation and logic apps. So let's explore how automating the resource cleanup and management can actually help you reducing manual intervention and further improving the efficiency. So for that, the first concept is Azure automation. Well, Azure automation allows you to schedule and run scripts for routine resource management tasks, like stopping unused virtual machine instances or deleting the expired resources. This helps to ensure that your environment stays optimized without any manual oversight. The next logic is in automation, that is runbooks. Well, what are runbooks? Runbooks are predefined scripts in Azure automation that automate the repetitive tasks such as clearing old data or deleting idle resources. You can set these runbook to run on a schedule or in response to a specific trigger. This specific trigger can be generated by your Azure Monitor, or it can also come from other apps. The next functionality is using Azure Logic Apps. Well, Logic applications or Logic apps enable you to automate workflows and integrate services. For example, you can set up a Logic app to trigger resource cleanup based on a specific event, like resource is inactive, or on a recurring schedule. Now, this trigger will actually use a predefined runbook to actually run the sequences, and those sequences will define how to remove or decommission a resource. So everything can be actually interconnected. The next logic is custom alerts. Well, remember, most of the Azure resources complement each other, or services actually complement each other. Here you can use Azure Monitor to set custom alert based on resource usage or inactivity. These alerts can trigger automated cleanup processes, helping maintaining a lean environment that prevent unnecessary resource bloating. So there will be no stale or old unused resources in your environment, and you will not pay for it. So overall, cleanup also helps to secure your environment and save some money. Now let's move to the lab and check out some functionality, how to actually create, manage, and also decommission resources. All right, in this lab, we will see the life cycle of creation, updation, and deletion of Azure resource. So right now we are in Azure portal, and to create any resource, you need a particular structure in place. The first thing on top you need is to be a part of a tenant. So as you can see, this is my tenant with a license on it. And the tenant provides you with the functionality of AAA, or you can say IAM, Identity and Access Management. So once you have an active tenant with a proper license for your organization, you will need a management group. But luckily, whenever you create a tenant, you always have a root management group that is called tenant root group. Now, after that, when you want to create your production resources like virtual machine, storage, networks, or any other resource, you need to pay for it. And the mechanism which gives you access and also charge you for the resource usage is subscription. So you need subscription after that. So tenant, then you need tenant root group, and then you need a subscription. I have a subscription here. After that, you need to create a resource group, just like this. So how will you create a resource group? You will just click on create. You will give it a name, NITARG01, let's say. And you have to create this resource group in a region. So let's say Canada Central is my region for this lab. Click next. Oh, you can also add tags. Tags will help you to filter out your information or resources in the future. Let's say you want to create a report on total expenses for a particular resource. Then you can filter out your resources with your tag, and then you can only focus on a specific tag, just like department equal to HR can be a tag. All right, resource groups are created. I will only use one, so I will just say resource group is created. And after that, you can deploy resources. So the hierarchy is tenant on top, then you have your management group, then you have your subscription, then resource group, and then resources. Now, what will be the life cycle of the resources? Well, the resources always start with your resource group and subscription. So let's say I want to create a resource called virtual network. You click on create. Every resource will ask you for the project details. That is a subscription and a resource group. You select subscription to make sure that the resource is binded to this subscription. And this subscription will calculate the total cost of that resource. And the resource group is just a logical boundary in which you will put all the resources which will share the common life cycle of that resource group, which means they live together, they die together. If you delete the whole resource group, all the resources inside it is gone, until unless you move it somewhere else. So you select that.
Then I will just give it a name, NITA VNet01. I will select a region. Now, your resource group is in Canada Central. That doesn't mean that all the resources need to be in the same region. It can be in a different region as well. For example, I can install it in East Asia. Why not? Click Next. I will give my network class AIP, and the default subnet is good enough. And here you go. So this was the process of creating a resource inside a resource group. The next is update. Can we update our resources? Update means make changes in our resources. The answer is yes and no. Yes, we can make changes on most of the configurable items, but then there are some properties which cannot be updated. For example, if I go to my virtual network, and let's say I want to change the name of this virtual network. Well, now you cannot change the name. You have to create a new network then. It's not that simple to just go ahead and change the name here. Microsoft don't allow to change names of the resources. Then, can you delete it? Of course. Can you configure it, make more updates? Yes. If I go to, let's say, address space, I can add or configure this address space. I can add more subnets if I want. Like, I can click here. Then I want to add one more, so default 2 is fine. Click Add. And it's done. So this is how you update your resources. Now the last step, that is deletion. Well, before deletion, I would like to tell you one more thing, which comes in the update phase. Let's say you want to move this resource from one resource group to other. Can we do that? Yes, that can be done. On most of the resources on top, you will see this option called Move. Then you have multiple options. Move this resource to another resource group, to another subscription, or to another region. Let's say we want to move this to another region because we only have one subscription. I will not touch it. Okay. So subscription is this, region is East Asia. I don't want this region. I want to go back to Canada Central. Why? Because I can show you my resource group. My resource group is in Canada Central. I'm talking about this one, which I created new. So I will move it there. So I'll move it to Canada Central. Click Next. Which resource you want to move? I just want to move this one. Okay. You can remove other resources which you don't want to move. I want to move this one. I will click Next and proceed. Oh, I have to provide acknowledgement and proceed. So now this will, or Azure will move my resource from East Asia to Canada Central. Now this movement of your resources can take some time. And while you're moving resources from one resource group to other, both resource group can also be locked on read-only access, so that you're not making any changes in between the resources are being moved from one location to other. As you can see, right now, Azure is moving this resource. And at the moment, it is validating all dependencies. Because if you are moving the resource, all the dependencies should move with it. And Azure is smart about it. So dependencies are validated, and last step will be to finish the move. All right, the next process started. That is preparing one resource for moving. So it's a proper elaborated process. First, the resource will be added to this queue, that is Azure Resource Mover. Then dependencies will be validated, and then you have to just wait for it to prepare your resource and then to move it. So even though your resource is pretty simple, you could have just deleted it and created it again. But sometimes you cannot delete your resources. You have to migrate it. All right, prepared one resource. Now the next step is initiate move pending. And I will click on initiate move. Click on initiate move. So it's a proper process. So that is the last step. All right, finally, now my resource is moving from one location to other. All right, this is how you move your resource. Let's go back and check if it is in a new location now or not. It still shows you East Asia. Don't worry. When the resource is moved to a new location, give it some time. It's been just a minute, maybe like 5-10 minutes, and come back. Your resource will be moved to a new location. Wait, one step is done. Remaining, actually, you have to commit your move as well. So it's like put it in the move queue, then initiate the move, then prepare the move, then you actually commit your move. So now I'm committing it. All right, so that resource is now deleted from the previous, let's say, East Asia region. And let's go and check it out. And here we go. Our network is in Canada Central now. So this is how you can actually move your resource. So that was your updation of your environment. And now the last step is deletion. Well, you can actually delete a resource one by one if you want. So you can go to resource group. You can go to resource group and you can delete the whole resource group. If you delete the whole resource group, remember all the resources inside it will be deleted. So this is one way. Or you can go to the resource itself and you can delete the resource one by one. It all depends on the scenario. Sometimes you may want to delete everything in the resource group, so it's better to delete the resource group itself. But sometimes you want more granular control. In that case, you can delete resource one by one as well. So that was the end of this lab. I will see you in the next one. All right, in this lab, we will see how to create and delete resources in Azure Portal, but using CLI environment, not Azure Portal GUI environment. So if we go to our Azure Portal, on top, you will see this button called Cloud Shell. Click on it. With this, Azure will open a CLI environment on your portal, and this will give you both PowerShell as well as Bash environment. Right now we are in Bash, so if you click on switch to PowerShell here, then you can switch to PowerShell environment as well. Now, in both environments, you will be authenticated automatically. So now I have some codes. Let's try that to create some resources. The first one is a simple one, that is to create a resource group. So Azure group create, where location is UK South, and the name will be NITA RG01. And here we go. We have a resource group. We can even check that out. Refresh. Here we go. So we have our NITA RG01. Now we can move ahead and create another resource that is a virtual network. So Azure Network VNet create. Azure Network is the actual service and VNet is the product here. Where address prefix, the address space will be class B 172.16.0.0/16. Name of that network will be NITA VNet. In which resource group are we going to create it? We are going to create it in NITA RG. Subnet name will be ncod sub. Subnet prefix will be 172.16.0.0/24. And this network will be created in location UK South. So right now it's running and it's done. So if you go to your network, And as you can see, NITA VNet is created. If you go inside it and search for subnet, NCOT sub is also created, that is class B. Now, this is how you can create your resources, and you can also delete it via command line. So Azure Network VNet, delete is the command. Resource group is NITA RG01, and the network we want to delete is NITA VNet. So it's just simple commands like that where you can control your environment. And now it is being deleted. It's done, it's gone. And let's delete our resource group itself. So here we have to put the name of the resource group, that is NITA RG01. It may ask you for permission, so just put yes and hit enter. Perfect, and it will be deleted. So by using command line interface, again, you can control the entirety of your Azure portal. So whatever you can do in graphical interface, you can repeat that in command line. Command line just gives you faster access. It is much robust and reliable. And it's gone. So if you go back, refresh, yes, there is no network. And that resource group is also gone, NITA RG01. Perfect. And now let's exit this environment. That was the end of this lab, and you can actually go online. Actually, Azure provide all the command lines to create and manage environments or resources. Try some command line and build your own resource environment.
Welcome back from the lab. Now, I hope that you understand the logic of creation, management, and decommission. Remember, the whole job of any administrator is to actually create, manage, and decommission resources. Most of the time might be spent during the middle process, that is management. So to summarize this episode, I will say that we covered how to effectively manage the full life cycle of resources in Azure, from provisioning to decommissioning. Here are the key points, right? First, provisioning and configuring resources can be done with the help of Azure Portal, CLI, or ARM templates for automation. We also learned that you can monitor resource health and performance with Azure Monitor, yet another service of Azure, and scale resources based on demand using auto-scaling. That is also auto-provisioning. Then we discussed decommissioning of the resources. It must be done carefully using Azure resource logs and policies to make sure that anyone who's decommissioning your environment must follow a proper sequence, and to also avoid accidental deletion. Now, when updating or deleting resources, one has to actually follow best practices to minimize risks, such as using resource log, staging environments or sandbox to check that what will happen, and also tracking changes to audit the logs. You can also leverage Azure automation and logic apps to automate resource cleanup, improving operational efficiency and cost optimization. By following these practices, you'll be able to ensure that your resources are properly managed throughout their life cycle, from creation to decommissioning, while keeping cost low and performance optimal or high. So thanks for tuning in today in this episode. I will see you in the next episode. Make sure you check out other courses on NetSoft IT Academy. Take care.